Hello, everyone. I am very happy to introduce a colleague of mine to all of you. This is Albertina, better known as Tina for short. Shifotoka. Did I pronounce that correctly, Tina? Can you say
That's
your
correct.
last name for us?
Yeah, Shifotoka.
Okay, Shifotoka. So Tina is the director of Augsburg's Center for Global Education Experience in Windhoek, Namibia. And she's going to talk about where that is and show you in a moment. One of the courses that she teaches, I'm sure will be of great interest to all of you. It is a history course on the history of racism and resistance in the United States and in Southern Africa, focusing particularly on her country of Namibia. So Tina, welcome to our class today, Intercultural Communication. And I know all of us will learn from what you have to say about Namibian culture. So, and the cultures, the many cultures of Namibia. So first of all, Tina, where is Namibia? Can you show us on a map?
Yes, I'll do that. Thank you so much, Anne, for inviting me to speak to your students. I'm very excited to share our perspective. Like Anne said, my name is Tina, and in addition to site directing the Southern African Center for Global Education, like Anne said, I'm also the instructor for the history course where we talk about the painful history of Southern Africa. I'm sure some of you have heard about the term apartheid, and that is really one of the biggest part in the history of these two countries that I'm going to talk to you about, where I do my work from, South Africa and Namibia. But yes, to just show with you and to share with you about Namibia and where Namibia is, I'm gonna share a screen where we're gonna see the a map of Africa, and that will give us a good idea as to where is Namibia in Africa. So I'm just gonna do that in a moment, share my screen with you, and then I will take you through that.
Thank you.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yep. Now we can.
Okay. Now you can. Okay, cool. So Namibia is a country, is one of the African countries. Africa as a continent is made up of about 54 countries. And so Namibia is one of those countries, and it's situated in Southern Africa. So if you look at the map of Africa here, down here in Southern Africa, this is the Southern African part. So you have the purple, where the coast is, country that is Namibia, bordering countries like South Africa down here, and then Botswana, Angola, and Zambia. And so those countries are called also SADC, the Southern African Development Community. And so Namibia is part of that community. And so a lot of time when people hear about a country in Africa, they think about this one big continent, and they think about the, kind of like similarities and think it's all the same. It's actually not. And I'm going to talk to you about how different these countries are, especially when it comes to the aspect of communication and intercultural, communication. So Namibia, just to share with you some facts, Namibia has a population of about 2.5 million. It's a small country in terms of the population, but geographically it's a very big country. And it's characterized by its political stability. Namibia got political independence in 1990 from the white South African. South Africa was actually colonized by the Dutch, and Namibia was then also fell into the same, hands of the same colonizers. And so until 1990, from 1948 until 1990, Namibia was then colonized by the white South Africans and then got independent in that year. And so what is one of the biggest portion that's well known in this continent about this country is now that ever since 1990, the country has been politically stable, and it has become also a home to many refugees coming from other African countries where there is no peace. So in terms of the gross domestic product, Namibia GDP's Namibia is estimated to be at a growth of at 4.5, and its major production sectors, or the main sectors that hold Namibia's economy, is the mining. This country mines with gold, copper, zinc, diamond, all of that. And then it's also well known for its tourism. The tourism sector, we have most probably one of the biggest national parks for wildlife seeing in the continent. The agriculture, the country is well known for its agricultural sector. A lot of what we do for our a source of livelihood and source of income comes from the agriculture. And of course, we have another big sector for our economy, the fisheries. And so we have the Atlantic Ocean, and a lot of investment, especially foreign investments, happens in that area of fisheries. However, regardless of all of that, again, the country is suffering from what we call the extreme social and economic inequality. This is the country. Actually, Namibia and South Africa are some of the countries in Africa where you find a huge gap between the rich and the poor. You have problems of like unequal distribution of wealth. You sometimes wonder whether, like, when you go to a certain area in Namibia and you go to another one, you start wondering whether you are in the same country. So we really have that problem. There is a high rate of unemployment, and especially among the youth, who, as we all know, are the backbone of every country's development or economy. But then you find a lot of young people in our country, whether educated or not educated, so like struggling to find a job. The country is also very vulnerable to environmental shocks. I think it's one of those countries that really suffers from climate change. The heat, like now, I was just telling and that for now we are sitting with up to 40 degrees Celsius. I don't know whether you guys use Celsius, but up to 40 degrees Celsius, it's really, really, really
over 100 degrees Fahrenheit.
That's what it is. Yeah. Thanks, Ann. And so another challenge with facing the country is the aspect of the problem of HIV/AIDS pandemic. And like I said, similar to the distribution of wealth in Namibia, we also have a problem of a huge gap between the rural and the urban, and you have more development concentrated in one area, especially in urban areas, and that forces people to migrate and to move from rural areas going into urban areas in hope of better opportunities. And this makes it very difficult for even municipalities and cities to provide basic services like water, electricity, ensure that people have good education and good health services, because you just have a lot of people in one area because of that gap. And of course, the population growth of this country, like I said, we are estimated currently at 2.5, but there's just quite a lot of things that are kind of like holding back the growth of the population, and really one of it is the aspect of HIV/AIDS that just created and left this country with a lot of orphans and a lot of vulnerable children. So this country was colonized, like I said, by the white South Africans. So, and it went through a system, a legalized system actually of apartheid. Apartheid means living in apart. Like people lived for almost 40 years of just being in a system that's legalized. There were laws of apartheid that made it difficult and made it very impossible for Black Namibians and white Namibians to be together or to work together, because everything was determined based on your skin color. And so that is the system that we call apartheid. And so whether it's in terms of like just falling in love, there were laws that were like really making it impossible for a white person and a Black person, to share love or to be in love. Simple things like a seat, there will be, wherever you go in public places, everything is clearly marked. This is for white only, this is for Black only. And so our parents, like my parents and their the generations that came before them, really went into a system that it was kind of like normal for them to first and foremost think about their skin color before you even do anything, even just buying a bread. As a Black person, you're not allowed to buy and eat white bread. And so when you go to the shop, looking at your skin color, you would already like know, okay, so black, brown bread or whatever, because of the system that was put in place. As painful as it was, so the system that left the legacies that we foresee and we are living with today, which governments have really been, the government of Namibia and South Africa have really been working hard on to ensure that they unify the people, they unite the people, because it's kind of like just, passed on from one generation. My parents will tell me that you don't do that to a white person. And then it's now my job as a person who's not living the apartheid time to help them, kind of get out of that system. But still, like I said, it left a lot of legacies, one of which is the economic inequalities. A lot of our economic things that are boosting our economy are really in the hands of the white people, because they inherited that from their forefathers, and during that time. And you have a lot of black people that are not educated today, because education was not an option for them during the apartheid time. And so you find them, the black people or the black parents, not even putting more effort in like having their kids to be educated, because they didn't go through education, and so they don't see the importance of it. And this is really like one of the battle that government, since after independence, have been working on, to educate and to create that awareness to the parents, to say, now you have a chance to send your kids to school, and please don't make them farm kids or farm workers, let them come to school. It's a process. And so the country that you are looking at here now, like you see that it's very close to South Africa. At some point, the early 1800s, this country was a part of South Africa. So Namibia and South Africa actually shares now quite a lot in terms of the culture, in terms of, you have people that speak, both languages in Namibia and in South Africa, because Namibia was a part of South Africa. And of course, for some discussions that happened, Namibia then was declared to be a country on its own. And so some of the languages shared will be like the languages that have cliques, we call it a Damaranama. There are also languages like Afrikaans. And so there's really quite a lot in terms of even just infrastructure. When you come to Namibia, when you go to South Africa, you hardly notice the difference, because it was built, initially by the same people and with the same style. So that is Namibia there in Africa. Like I said, you can see that when we talk about Africa, because we have students that comes to us, and when they come to Southern Africa to do their study abroad program, they struggle when they go back home to answer a question from the families, like, how was Africa? And then you're like, okay, I was only in this little portion of the continent, I wasn't here. And so it becomes very difficult. And therefore it's very important, for us and for you as students to understand that Africa is a continent made up of many countries, and these countries are also different in so many things, whether it's challenges, whether it's success, whether it's the culture. Everything is different in these countries. Of course, there are similarities, but every country is unique on its own. So maybe just to answer that question, and on where is Africa,
Yes,
I think I have.
That's terrific, Tina. Can you just clarify, what is the official language that is used in schools in Namibia, in most of the country?
Okay,
Official
so
language.
Namibia have only one official language, and that's English. So we try our level best to, make sure that we try to speak English. And it's a
Beautiful.
foreign language. As difficult as it is, people are also excited, to speak. But everything, the official language in offices, in schools, and everywhere in Namibia is English. And we have about 11 ethnic groups, of which now all those ethnic groups are, using English in the offices.
But of those different 11 ethnic groups, each of them has their own language, like Oshivambo and others, right? Herero. Mm-hmm. What is your first language?
Each of those, I am an Oshiwambo. And so each of those different languages have, ethnic groups have different languages. And again, they also differ in terms of cultural, norms and values. And so we will talk about it when we go into the deeper in the discussion. But each of those ethnic groups have their own languages. And so for now, we kind of are at a discussion as a country to see if we can adapt to one of these ethnic groups groups, to be a second official language in Namibia. But for now, we just have English.
Okay, thank you. And the idea is that English is a unifier rather than just having one. That's great. And from the history, if I understand correctly, during the many decades in which South African white people ruled the country and had legalized segregation, apartheid, during that time, they basically had a divide and conquer system where they tried to separate the different 11 ethnic groups, right? So that you wouldn't be unified against them. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the main purpose of apartheid was not only, okay, first and foremost, it was to look at the division between white and black people, but they also extended it then to say among the black communities, also like, let's divide them according to the ethnic group, so that it was kind of like a system, a tactic to rule, divide and rule type of system, to make sure that they don't work together against the colonizer, or they don't plan anything together. And so you as an Oshiwambo could not go to a Herero area unless if you had a permit to do so. And so that made it very difficult for people to even learn each other's language, because for so many years they lived in separation. So yeah.
Great. So thank you. So in these past, I guess about 30 years since independence from South Africa, building a new nation, trying to decolonize the country and people's minds, as you were talking about your parents who were still reinforcing ideas from the past, what would you see, knowing that there are all these different cultures within one bigger culture and one bigger country that's within a big continent, right? What would you see as some of the dominant cultural values and communication styles of Namibia? What makes Namibia different than Nigeria or Sudan or Algeria or Tanzania? What makes Namibians Namibians? Culturally speaking.
Yeah, so what we have seen, throughout my professional life, when I've been teaching the course and having the component of intercultural communication, one thing I have noticed is that many African countries, struggle to find that one common thing that they share, which we find that in Namibia, there is few things that, regardless of the fact that people were separated by the colonizers, there's still those huge values that people still hold on to, and they are sharing those among all the ethnic groups. One of those values is the aspect of how we greet. Our greeting, we put more effort. When I say we, I'm talking about all the 11 ethnic groups in Namibia. So we put a lot of effort and a lot of respect to greeting. And so you won't go to an ethnic group in this country and then people will be comfortable when you just show up and start talking, or without really greeting. And when I say greeting, it's not just hello, it's a greeting that can take you for about 5 minutes. It has handshaking, it has a kneel down. If you are talking to an elder, you have to kneel down. If you are a man, you have to bow your head. Those are some of the, that's actually one of the main, value that I'll say that the Namibians in all ethnic groups have really put and have kept until to this date. A lot of our values have been tempered with because of, the outside influence that came with the colonizers, but there are those that, people really, really have kept on. And that, like I said, that is one of them, the aspect of greeting. And the other one is also the way that we communicate to one another. In all ethnic groups, there is a way that as a young person, if an elder is speaking or saying something, even if it's wrong, there is a way that you come in to correct it, or there is a way that you respond to that. Sometimes, and that is also very problematic, because sometimes you see that the elders are wrong and you want to challenge that, but how you are coming in to challenge it, because of that respect that's already installed, to say you don't speak when the elders are speaking. And like I said, sometimes they are wrong, but then that's also another thing. And that's what we have seen now with social media and the world becoming one global village, as people are learning from one another to say, you can challenge some of these norms, some of these practices that have been put in place by society. And then we have seen now a lot of young people painted by the elders to be disrespectful, but really it's needed, because now things are all about their lives. and their livelihood, and of course they are challenging some of those norms. But the greeting aspect, I think I will pull out that to be one of the main value that I think is shared among all the different cultures in this country.
Tina, just a comment. So the second thing you mentioned about respect for elders and how you communicate with elders, and you know, especially from your generation, you would not correct an elder, right? Because they would be losing face, as is often said, right? So you have to respect that and not publicly say anything, make them feel bad. And younger generations are being more influenced by the United States and other cultures from social media and maybe making the elders lose face. I can see that tension happening. But I think that's what intercultural communication specialists and anthropologists refer to as high power distance, right? So in the past, at least, and still somewhat today, the elders expect that they are elevated, that they're high up, and that the young kids, you know, teenagers and college students are lower down and need to show them respect. And so that's a really interesting phenomenon that's happening. It also sounds like with the expectation that you would keep your mouth shut instead of correcting an elder, that there's also an indirect communication style that is preferred, right? You wouldn't direct conflict style, that you would not directly enter into conflict with somebody or engage in conflict, but that you would maybe find another way. Can you talk a little bit more about direct and indirect communication and conflict styles in Namibia?
Yeah. So now maybe just taking it off from where I left it, that way of silencing the young people when the elders are speaking has actually kind of like enabled the young people to start using what we call non-verbal, you know, ways of communicating.
Oh, great.
So without saying anything, you have a way of, like, you know, behaving in front of an elder to show that you are actually in disagreement, or you are, you know, without saying a word. And so that is one way. But there's also a direct way of communicating. Yeah, there's also a direct way of.
Is it seen as respectful to do that?
It's not.
No. Okay.
It's not. One way is that I think maybe because also the elders knows that when they say something and it's not right, you know, somebody have to react. And so when they see that, you know, young people are kind of like indirectly using their body language to communicate, to say or yes, you know, then they also expect that. In any case, when they are speaking, they will read, you know, the body language of the young people, because they know that they will not be able to say something, because they also didn't say, you know, much when they were young people, but they will be reading their reaction and then their body language to, you know, kind of like judge whether they are in an agreement or they have, you know, and then from there they will then maybe give them a chance to speak, and then, you know, the young people will then find a way to say whatever they want to say. But there's also a direct way of communicating, because once in this country, once the elders have spoken, there is also a way that, you know, even before colonization, these things were happening, that you find young people organizing themselves in a way that there got to be a spokesperson. If it's something about the community, there got to be somebody, you got to choose somebody who will speak on your behalf. And so today, when we talk about those icons of like the Mandela, the Sam Nujoma, you know, it's all built in from that thing were selected by others to be our spokesperson, because that's how people were brought up. So, and therefore, the direct way to communicate to the elders, or the correct way to communicate in our cultures, is really to at it, you know, not just, and that makes it, again, when you listen to this, you are also seeing a problem where if you have a group of people, then you only have one or two people that are speaking on behalf of others, and a lot of time they might not even represent the views, you know, the viewpoints of everybody. That in itself is a problem. But the way things are happening here is that you don't speak when the parents are speaking, and if you want to speak, then you select somebody who will then reach out to them, and that person have to be very careful as well as to how you approach the elders, really very much strongly. So, and these things for us are built like in Namibia is considered to be it's a more Lutheran country, and we are categorized to be about 95% Christian. And so the teachings also from the Bible, this is a religion, the teaching also from the Bible that says the 4 commandments, respect the elders so you will live longer. And so all of that, really has a huge in terms of building the manner in which communication happens in Namibia, especially between a young person and an elder person. And that's also like tantamount to the same thing. I mean, when you talk about conflict management, if people are not, if there is a conflict among people, again, taken from that angle, there is always somebody that will speak on behalf of a group, and
That's great.
yeah, and nowadays, like I said, the world is becoming a global village. There are now demonstrations, there are now strikes, there are now all these things, and everybody's shouting. And what for the parents, a lot of time, even if young people have good ideas, they tend not to listen more because they think this is now disrespectful because this is not what they are used to. They are used to having one person speaking on behalf of the group. But people are getting fed up with so many things that are happening today in such a way that they just lose it and they find themselves just like, let's all go talk, let's all sing, let's go all do all of this. And all of those things are kind of like, there's now that conflict between what is happening today and what is culturally acceptable or what is supposed to be culturally correct in the ears of those that are listening to the cries that are happening today.
Tina, do you think that that might also be a conflict of the value of collectivism of the older generations, kind of the community as a big value, the collective, versus maybe more individualism among young people sneaking in from social media and influences from the United States and elsewhere? How would you describe that? And what are some of the other really big cultural values of Namibians?
So I think our communities here are more like living into, again, regardless of the fact that during the colonial time, the communities were separated or they were divided. Before colonization already, our communities were already like living in the collectivism, kind of way of organizing themselves. We had what we call Ubuntu, a concept that say you are because, we are, or you are because of I am. So like everybody feels like I am because of the other people, and that realization of accepting that other people also play a role in shaping who you are. It's still, and it has been again one of the biggest contributing factors to how communities communicate and relate to one another in Southern Africa in general, and of course in Namibia in particular. Our parents came from, our ancestors came from a system that it takes a community to raise a child. Of course, today we're looking at these things differently because everything is money. And if you are educated, you feel like, I can only afford to take care of my family. But in the past, it takes a community to raise a child. And that is, again, taking me to another biggest cultural value, the fact that discipline was not only installed by, or given by your parents, but it was actually given by a neighbor finds you playing with water as a child, they will beat you, and nobody will, the parents will not quarrel, or the parent will not get into a conflict of like, why are you beating my child? It was accepted to be the correct thing because everybody had the responsibility of that. So, and we call this concept, like I said, Ubuntu, which was also then used during the colonial time when the leaders realized that, what, for us to win the colonizer, we needed to use the Ubuntu concept. We needed to work together the way that our fathers, our ancestors did in the past. So that's another value. The language is also another one. That the communication, when it happens, when you speak to the elders, when you speak to the people of these communities in their language, it kind of like shows a lot of respect. What we have seen with our students is that you have students that come to Southern Africa and they really like, I mean, if people are speaking English, why do I have to learn, even the greetings in the local language? but it shows great respect when you do that. And so what we do, and when our students come here, is that we take some times of teaching them how to greet, and to also help them, the way you greet. Like I said, the handshaking, the nodding, the kneeling, all of that. So that is also another important cultural value when it comes to communication. Really, the ability to be able to say walalapo, which is good morning, in Shiwambo, in just good. I mean, if you are to go to a different place, a different country, the best you could do at least is be able to say a word or two in a local language, and then people will buy into whatever you are telling them, and then they will accept you actually. So yeah.
That's great. How do we say thank you, Tina?
Tangi.
Tangi? Tangi to you? Tangi. Okay,
Yeah,
so
Tangi.
we want to thank you. I know you only have a few more minutes before you have to go, but are there some closing words, things that you really want our class to know about Namibian culture, communication styles, or other things that you want to share with us before you end?
Sure. Yeah, I think one thing that I want to leave your students with is the fact that we need to really acknowledge and realize that the world has become one small village. And so wherever you find yourself, because now you can live literally everywhere, except for now that we have COVID-19 that's making traveling and difficult, but you can live literally everywhere. And wherever you are, it's just so good to, before you even travel, to think about, read about where you are going, and be able to know what are some of those strong cultural practices that are happening in the area where I am going. This will help you to, because you don't want to offend people when you go to their places, number one. You also need to be very flexible, because realizing that you're coming from a different context, people might say things that, literally will like maybe offend you. And so you need to be very open to realizing that I'm not in my context, and sometimes things are not happening, to hurt you intentionally. I'll give you an example. When our students come here, some of the communication problems that happens, and we always try to use the orientation time to educate them, is that you are getting in touch with people of your age, like young people, and getting together and along with forming friendship with young people. And so you take an example of, like, let's go to out for lunch. And so when you go out for lunch, you invite a friend, let's go out for lunch. Now, in our culture, practically, it's like when you do that, it's like you are going to take care of the bill. And so what we have seen in the past, because of that communication gap, what we have seen in the past is that, people will go with the local friends, and the friends will take as much as whatever they want. And when it comes to billing, then the American student is taking a bill to like underline, this is my bill. And the other one will be like, wow, you invited me. So the communication in terms of, the things that happen, the practice, sometimes small things, but really have a great impact in terms of how your relationship will, continue being with the people. Some of the words as well, or some of the means. Here in Namibia, if you look at me, I have gained weight, which is for many people, and it's rightfully so, it's an offense to call me like, oh, to comment on my weight, actually, But here in our country, we are still like in the process of like educating people that don't do that. And so you will find that people are like, oh, you actually have gained, or you are fat, and people will, it kind of like closes you off because you are not used to that. And that's what I'm saying. Some of the things can be very offensive, but now how you educate the people to say, okay, maybe that, or this in the US we don't use, you need to find a better way of communicating that to the people. So be flexible wherever you are, find yourself, but also be willing and show interest in people's culture. And again, if something is not like, for you, or it doesn't just sit well with you, find a way of like, sharing with the people how you feel without making it like, oh, I don't, maybe it's the biggest. So those are some of the ways. Or you're like talking to people and you're like giggling, or you are coming to a meeting and you are late, And all of those are really some of the things that as a person becoming an international person, because we are all becoming international being. So we need to think about all of that. But again, the aspect of conflict management when it comes to communication is very key, and therefore it's very important to already find how did people do this, solve their problems in the past, and what are some of the things that happened that has changed, over time, if at all there is a change. But so those are some of the things that I wanted to share. As you can see on the pictures that I'm showing you there, so those are some of the students that we had talking to one of the liberation icon by the name Antoinette Sithole in South Africa, and she was just explaining to them how young people started organizing themselves in South Africa to be able to fight the ideologies or the ideas of the colonizers. But I mean, there are always different ways of communicating depending on the age groups as well. In the picture there, you are seeing like it's a mix of our students, and okay, the guy in the white t-shirt is our driver. When you find young people communicating to one another, it's totally different from when you find young people communicating to the elders. Totally different. And of course, again, depending on where you are, if you are in a class, if you are in if you are in a place like this one looking at elephants and whatever in the park, I mean, it's with people of the peer of your age, you can use your informal way of communicating. But the moment the elders come in, it changes into a formal way, and that is mainly due to the aspect of respect. I think that's all that I wanted to share with your students when it comes to intercultural communication and looking at some of the values in Southern Africa, particularly in Namibia. And thank you.
Thank you, Tina. This has been very, very insightful about Namibian cultures and dominant culture and cultural influences around the world. We very much appreciate your taking the time to share your insights and wisdom and knowledge with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.